This is TransportBT, a podcast of BT correspondents.
Welcome to TransportBT, a podcast of BT correspondents. I'm your host, Derryn Wong. Every week, my colleagues and I break down a business story that matters. So all of us know how petrol stations make money. You rock up to the pump, you get a nice whiff of benzene, you top your vehicle up and pay a not inconsiderable amount of money, which is significantly more than you used to be. You don't pay at the pump, you walk in and buy maybe 5 cans of abalone if you're that sort of person. That's how they make money. Anyway, you get the idea. But EV charging is a very different ballgame. And I've certainly wondered how charge point operators or CPOs make their bucks. While more than a third of new cars sold in 2024 in Singapore were EVs, in sheer number terms, there are still only around 26,000 EVs in Singapore, and compare that to around 660,000 cars in total. So by my math, at a public charger, it only takes around $30 for a full charge of a regular mid-size electric SUV compared to around $80 or more for a petrol car. But naturally, it's a complex picture. It's not just about pure costs. Neither is it even just about autos. It could even be about boats and other kinds of transport in future. And that's why today I've dragged someone who knows this business inside out into the studio with me. Dean Cher, Head of Mobility, Sustainable Energy Solutions at SP Group. Thanks for being here, Dean.
Good morning, Derryn. Very happy to be here.
I'm sure we're having an electrifying conversation. But give us a background into the business. SP Group has SP Mobility, which is basically the charge point operator, right? So tell us about it.
Yeah, sure. As a group, actually, we started electrification experiment way back in 2016 when we electrified our fleet. Through that, we actually learned about EV charging. And then as the national grid operator in Singapore, we actually started the build-up of infrastructure. The Singapore Green Plan 2030 wasn't pronounced until, I think, February 2021.
So you guys were very early, actually.
We were extremely early. So maybe we were like the guy who is dancing on the dance floor waiting for people to come.
How big is the charging network now? Are you guys the biggest in Singapore?
We are one of the biggest, yes. For fast charging, definitely the biggest. So I think in terms of number of charging points, we are over 2,000 charging points already.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, so quite a sizable figure considering that, when we started in 2018, the LTA statistics show you that there were only 700 EVs then in 2018.
Wow.
But fast forward 2025, wow, here we are today.
Okay, so for our listeners who maybe don't know much about EV charging, what's the landscape like now? I mean, how many public chargers are there and how many private chargers? I mean, I know a lot of EV owners are also landed property owners, so they charge at home.
Great question, Derryn. In terms of the number of charging points, by our own count, public/condo points, we're probably about 10,000 today. 8,000 could be landed/private owners. This could be companies that maintain their own chargers for their own fleets. So we are looking probably today in Singapore around 19,000 charging points.
So the green plan is like how many by?
60,000 by 2030.
2030. Oh, I think we're pretty much on track.
Yeah, well, but wanted there, 5 more years to go.
Pretty much every HDB car park I go to nowadays, you can see the chargers there.
Yeah. We've come a long way. So I think for the man on the street, in terms of infrastructure, if you don't live in a landed house, there actually are chargers everywhere. I think in Singapore, this thing called range anxiety
Yes.
shouldn't be as real because there really is a charger quite near you. The only thing is it convenient? But the elephant in the room is, people always say charging takes a lot of time, right? Yeah. Which is true if you're charging AC.
What's AC and DC?
So AC is alternating current, DC is direct current. Cars actually charge via DC. Not AC. But if you rock up to a AC charger, you can still charge. Now, why is that so? Because each and every EV, there's an onboard charger. So the onboard charger actually determines how much juice you can take from the AC charger. So you can charge a car via AC or DC. The only thing is time.
And that takes 4 or 5 hours for a standard, normal car?
Maybe 7 hours. But then again, there's a fallacy there because usually people don't wait until 0 to charge their cars. Just like a phone, right?
Little top-ups every day.
Correct. You do little top-ups every day where it's convenient. If we look at the fuel experience, every 1.5 weeks you walk up to a petrol station, you spend 10 minutes there, go in, you buy an ice cream, or in your case, Derryn, 5 cans of abalone.
That's right.
Yeah. You do that. And then you're out and you're like, okay, my life is done now. I'll only think about it, 10 days later. But actually for an EV, the positive thing is there are actually literally 15,000 points all over Singapore that you can actually charge. So you can actually charge it in your office if there are EV chargers there. So that's something you can't do for petrol. Imagine, putting a petrol nozzle in your car for 7 hours and then coming back the next day. I mean, it doesn't quite work. But having said that, there is a lifestyle change that people need to get used to. That's just part of the transition.
One thing I always see, I go to a mall near my house, there's always EVs at the chargers. And obviously these people have decided, let's go have dinner. Let's go charge the car for like an hour and then come back and it's almost done, So it's not rocking up the petrol station 10 minutes in and out. It's finding ways to accommodate charging in a convenient way, right?
Correct. We call it destination charging in terms of locations that people primarily go there for
another purpose.
You look at the app like, I want to go West Coast Plaza. Oh, wait, there's SP chargers there. I'll just go there, plug in and I go have dinner. Then I come out, I'm 10-20% charged.
For you guys and CPOs, how do you make money really? Because when I do the sums in my head, from what little I know, it doesn't make sense. Like one DC charges like 100 grand or something like that. I charge my car full, it only takes me like $30. So
well, I think the reality is, in terms of making money, we're not quite there yet. And I think I speak on behalf of probably almost all CPOs. It's a proverbial question, right? Like, which came first, the charger or the car, right? So I think for most consumers, actually, the charger comes first. So ourselves and our competitors, we've all spent the last few years really building up infrastructure. Mm-hmm. So let's say there are 19,000 chargers for 32,000 vehicles. Looking at an extremely healthy figure. But when it comes down to the business part of it, then it's only been in 2024 that we've seen quite a lot more vehicles.
Yeah. The new EV sales went from 15% in 23 to more than 30%, which is quite crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it's inverted. So the EV infrastructure is the horse that pulls the EV cart.
Yes.
So how many horses do you need? How much scale do you need to be profitable,
Well, I think one definitely needs scale in the Singapore market. By the last we looked at it, there were more than 30 competitors out there in the market.
30? Wow.
Yeah, really quite a big number. But they cut across a big range, right? You've got, smaller players, then you've got the very large players. And one thing that's happened last year as well has been the legislation.
So in 2022, the Land Transport Authority announced the EV Charging Act. And this is to regulate charge point operators and everything to do with EV charging in Singapore, which is quite a significant move.
And tied to that is really compliance costs.
Yeah, that's true. And they went up for sure.
Once you start regulating, then scale becomes more important.
So late last year, another CPO, Charge Plus, bought about 140 EV chargers from 3 companies that have decided to stop their own commercial charging services. And this was after, all the licensing figures came in and they said they couldn't afford to continue running these chargers.
Yeah, so I think we see consolidation in the market. I think it's quite natural because the market is quite small.
But how do you see competition shaping up in the next few years? It's going to be a case of where you have 4 or 5 really big guys and that's it?
Yeah, well, in Singapore, we have many examples that we can take from. Like, for example, telcos, 3 big ones. So I think in Singapore, that's probably instructive because ultimately the market is just too small. Perhaps consolidation would be a way to go. Another thing which quite prevalent in Europe is really CPOs become asset owners only. It's like a telco, right?
And then they rent out the network to people or to resell. And
then your EMSPs, your e-mobility service providers, are actually the ones that sell the service.
But it wouldn't be a case like public transport where the LTA owns all the trains and all that stuff. And then the operators operate because the SP doesn't count as a government. I don't know, does it?
No. So for the record, we are a private enterprise.
There we go.
But then the thing is, we're 100% owned by Temasek, which to some people think that, that makes you public.
So you have to address the most pervasive myth. Do you guys get your electricity for free?
The answer is no, actually. When we operate out of a charging point, let's say we're in a retail mall, we're technically a tenant there.
Yeah,
so whatever, electricity plan the landlord is on, actually we have to follow it. So actually we have to pay for electricity.
So you heard it from the man himself, SP doesn't get energy for free. That's because of the name. Okay, now we're going for our break. But when we come back, we're going to talk about other electrifying stuff. Not just about electric cars, but it could also be boats or maybe even planes. We'll be back.
Money Hacks by the Business Times delivers useful financial tips every Monday. Subscribe to the playlists in Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. But if watching is your thing, we've got you covered. Subscribe to the Money Hacks playlist in the podcast tab of BT's YouTube channel and watch as Howie Lim gets the inside scoop on the best money hacks. Subscribe and watch today.
And now, Back to TransportBT, a podcast of BT correspondents.
Welcome back to TransportBT with my guest Dean Cher of SP Mobility. We're finding out how EV charging operators make money and how they plan to make more money too. So a very good thing happened to you guys in the form of acquisition. So please tell me about it.
Yeah, so we have partnered with HSBC Asset Management. They are taking up a minority stake in the company. Their purpose is to open up a window of opportunity. They have a very strong net zero focus as well. So I think our objectives are aligned.
But in terms of significance, I mean, this is a bank pretty much coming in and saying, we believe in your business and we're going to put some money down in it because we see there's a lot of potential there. That's pretty much what's going on.
Yeah, correct. And I think it bodes well for the industry as a whole, because ultimately, when investors put money into this industry, it would give people confidence to say that, yeah, the Singapore's transition plan is well and truly underway.
I mean, there was a report last year that said that Singapore is going to be the market that really leads the entire region in terms of EV adoption. So I think that's also another vote of confidence that Singapore is very clearly on this track. It's not gonna deviate from it.
I remember it clearly, actually. I think Straits Times, front page news.
That's why I didn't run it. Not kidding. So, last year we were hanging out at the port and that was one of the first charging points for boats, right? And that was Harbourcraft. So for our listeners, Harbourcraft are the craft that run around Singapore's waters. They don't go beyond the waters, but they do things like carrying cargo to bigger ships and things like that. So what were you guys doing there and what is the potential of that a new market?
We were at the Marina South Pier. So we worked with our partner, Pixis Energy. They are a local startup.
Building electric boats, right?
So essentially, we partner with them to actually install this 150 kilowatt DC charger at Marina South Pier. So it's the first charger at a public landing site in Singapore.
Right.
So quite a key milestone.
I think the significant thing is that for this electric hovercraft, the Maritime Port Authority has actually done a very systematic approach. They've asked for the tender. Now they're looking into how it works. And this does look like it could be a thing, right? I mean, replacing, if you've ever been to the port and you smell the lovely diesel and you're like, oh, this is so healthy, man. Ooh, change all of that to electric. It'd be really good.
Yeah, I think in terms of fumes, I think it's quite bad because the bumboats are, spewing out that.
Yeah, exactly, right. They're pretty much 50s technology.
And then that's one thing interesting about vessels because there's no COE.
That's true.
So very old vessels are still operating. So I think on the marine side, MPA has very clear, ambitious targets to reach by 2030. So I think electrification is part of it. I think they're also looking at biodiesel as well. So I think electrification will work where it makes sense. For vehicles in Singapore, it makes a lot of sense. I think coastal vessels, it can make sense as well because, it's journeying within
short distances.
You don't want to take a cruise ship that's run totally on electricity because that's not going to get you very far, I think. For things which need high energy, like airplanes, big boats, you still need fossil fuels. But the question is really, maybe does it have higher biodiesel content? Is it synthetic fuel? Maybe you can carbon capture the emissions as it goes up. So you start going down that path.
So that's the sea side, or the maritime side. But there is also a lot of potential for, zero emissions applications towards the air as well, right?
Yeah, we are working with CAG, this project where we're installing chargers on the air side.
What does air side mean?
So the way to think about it is when you get on a plane or you get off a plane as you're walking down, and you can see actually there are quite a lot of vehicles in there. They're meant to really serve the internal population.
Food, the luggage, right? Fuel. Right?
Yeah, or people. There's a huge microcosm of vehicles in there. We've worked with CAG to install fast chargers on the air side.
So are they going to have a big percentage of these airside vehicles switch over to electric? Because they don't go very far.
Just like if you think about coastal harbour crafts, circling around Singapore, airside vehicles is almost the same thing. So we're really looking to embrace mobility.
Of all kinds?
Of all kinds, yeah.
So as we wrap up, 10 years ago, this pretty much didn't exist. This industry didn't exist. Where do you think it's going to go in the next 5 years in general terms?
Something which I read recently, in 2005, for EVs, they were still using lead-acid batteries. Well, now you fast forward to 2025, which is where we are today. Technology has really improved quite a bit. So everyone's promising you you can do a quick charge in 15 minutes, and get 600 kilometers range and more. So I think the future is quite exciting. I think EVs as a proposition for everyday travel, especially in a small island like Singapore, actually makes a lot of sense. Overall, the landscape for EV charging should be fairly positive.
Fingers crossed, don't jinx it, yeah.
Yes, so I can confirm Derryn did cross both hands. So let's see how that works.
So according to Mr. Cher from SP Group, EV charging has a bright future. Well, EVs have a bright future in Singapore. That's it for Transport BT this time. Thanks, Dean.
Thanks, Derryn.
So next week, BT Correspondent will be back with another episode, so please stay tuned. Now, as a transport podcast, we aim to cover everything that drives, flies, swims, or maybe even rockets through space if it comes down to it. If you have any thoughts or questions about the show, please email us at btpodcasts@sph.com.sg. I'm Derryn Wong. Thank you for listening.
This is a podcast by the Business Times. Find more BT podcasts at businesstimes.com.sg/podcasts. Or wherever you get your podcasts. This podcast is meant to provide general information only. SPH Media accepts no liability for loss arising from any reliance on the podcast or use of third parties' products and services. Please consult professional advisors for independent advice.